Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, Prof. Hadi. Thank you so much for the time. Today, I want to presentation about your lessons, academic speaking for scientific purpose, with the title How to Quickly Memorize Vocabulary. This presentation is a midterm of academic speaking for scientific purpose. Before starting the presentation, please I would like to introduce myself. I'm Suspita Novices, that you can call me Fifi. Hello and welcome to my presentation about vocabulary. In this presentation, we have discussed about four outlines. First, what is definition of vocabulary? Second, the influence of vocabulary mastery to reading comprehension. Third, the importance of vocabulary learning. Fourth, conclusion. Introduction. A glance of my presentation. In learning English, one thing is very important to know first is vocabulary, which is in English known as vocabulary. Vocabulary is a language component that contains information about the meaning and used words in the language. The richness of words possessed by a speaker, writer, or something language. A list of words, a rhyme, like a dictionary, but with short my practical explanation. So, to be able to speak English, we must have sufficient vocabulary. This is often an obstacle for people who want to be able to speak English well. Many people use memorization methods to enrich their vocabulary. However, in my opinion, memorizing without further action to keep the meaning, the memorized word is memory is meaningless. So, if you want to use the memorization method, you have to use the memorized word is speaking or writing so that you will still remember this word. There are many things you can do to enrich your vocabulary, one of which is book reading. Be diligent in reading English text and be diligent finding out the meaning of the words in the text. In essence, to enrich our vocabulary in English, foster curiosity is asked about words meaning we don't know. Whenever we now come across new word, try to find it out their meaning. Part of being able to understand content of the sound. This can also train our pronunciation with a dictionary. A. What is the definition of vocabulary? Vocabulary is the basic that must be learned first by learners. Vocabulary is the number of words in a language. All the words that a person knows or that are used in particular book. A list of words and their meaning, especially those found in the textbook in foreign language Harvey 1995. So, it can be concluded that vocabulary is the number of words in foreign language mastered by student or English language learner. Vocabulary is the basic that must be learned first by learners. It will help the learners in learning English language well. Vocabulary is core component of language proficiency and provides much of basis for how well learners speak, listen, read, and write. Vocabulary refers to the words we must understand to communicate effectively. There are four types of vocabulary: reading vocabulary, listening vocabulary, writing vocabulary, and then speaking vocabulary. Reading vocabulary is all the word he or she can recognize when reading. This is the large type of vocabulary simply because it includes that other there. Listening vocabulary. Listening vocabulary is all the words he or she can recognize when listening to speech. This vocabulary is aided in size by context and tone of voice. Writing vocabulary. Writing vocabulary is all the words he or she can employ in writing. Contrary to the previous two vocabulary types, the writing vocabulary is stimulated by its user. The last, speaking vocabulary. Vocabulary plays a fundamental role in the reading process and contributes greatly to a reader comprehension. A reader cannot understand a text without knowing what most of the words mean. So, students learn the meaning of words indirectly through everybody expressions with written language. Other words are learned through carefully designed instruction. The other types of vocabulary. First, active vocabulary. Second, passive vocabulary. Third, expressive vocabulary. Fourth, receptive vocabulary. Active vocabulary is collection of words that are understood and used when speaking and writing in everyday life. Passive vocabulary are words that we might recognize but are not commonly used in normal communication. Third, expressive vocabulary. Expressive vocabulary is the vocabulary we use to tell about speaking and writing. Third, and then fourth, receptive vocabulary is vocabulary that we understand in reading and listening, or the vocabulary that we process when receiving information. Next, vocabulary growth. Initially, in the infancy phase, vocabulary growth requires no effort. People may then expand their vocabularies by engaging in activities such as reading, playing word games, singing, and participating in vocabulary programs. The importance of vocabularies are an extensive vocabulary aids expression and communication. Vocabulary size has been directly linked to reading comprehension. Linguistic vocabulary is synonymous with thinking vocabulary. A person may be judged by others based on his or her vocabulary. The kinds of reading necessary to produce vocabulary clues. Some researchers suggest that almost any reading will produce vocabulary clues as in 1993. Other contend that if students consistently select text below their current reading level, even wide reading won't result in measurable vocabulary growth. Arthur 1994. For students to get the most out of wide reading, the conclusion of most researchers is that they should read for far for use for far for far read for various purpose and read text at various level of difficulty. Students should read some text simply for enjoyment and some text that challenge them. Researchers who have observed students reading independently in classrooms also suggest that teacher guidance to students in selecting books can make independent reading experience productive. As is true for any method promoting vocabulary growth, wide reading has some limitation. One limitation is that although wide reading may be effective in producing general vocabulary growth, it might not be an effective method for teaching the specific word the student need to comprehend particular literature selection or particular content area textbooks. Specific specific word instruction refers to vocabulary instructions that enable students to develop in-depth knowledge of important words, that is, to know word well enough to access information about them from memory as they read. The question often posed by teachers is which specific words should be taught. B. The influence of vocabulary mastery to reading comprehension. First, teachers must offer direct instruction of techniques of procedure for developing approved and varied vocabulary. New vocabulary terms must be connected to student previous knowledge and experience. Students should be able to contextualize the vocabulary terms they have learned and use them in society. Ediger, 1999. Practice and repetition are important methods by which students can become familiar with new words and understand how they may be used correctly. Left 1997. And the last, teachers should model an enthusiasm for and curiosity about new words through their own behavior and attitudes. So, the last point, the importance of vocabulary learning. Vocabulary learning is important aspect in the learning foreign language. As a linguist David Wilkins in Thornbury 2002 says that vocabulary learning is very important. Without grammar, very little can be conveyed. Without vocabulary, nothing can be conveyed. Thus, vocabulary are the flesh of language, while grammar is a skeleton. In order to be able to use the language productively, students must know certain amount of vocabularies not only for communicating orally but also written. It is in line with the concept of communicative approach in which learners have a big chance to use the language directly classroom activities. This approach is useful in improving student vocabularies, though the approach students are forced to use the language directly in either spoken or written communication. Now we have the last presentation conclusion. After the author described in the chapter, then I ask a writer can draw conclusion in this paper. Some researchers suggest that almost any reading will produce vocabulary clues, Carson's 1993. First, making the correct connection when understanding the language between the forms and the meaning words, including discriminating the meaning of closely related words. Second, when producing the language using correct form a word from the meaning intended. So that's all my presentation about vocabulary, how to quickly memorize vocabulary. Thank you.